Welcome to episode 3 of the Hoop Threads podcast. I got my guy, Jake Rosen from Jake and the Paint On. He's a local expert. He's not going to say that about himself, but I'll say it on the draft and then just on high school basketball in the area. So thought it would be great to have him on. Great to have you, Jake.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. When you approached me with this podcast idea that you got the green light from on Mike, I was psyched for you, first of all, and then hopefully that I would eventually be able to be a guest. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So in doing some prep for this podcast, I was scrolling through your Twitter a little bit, also listening to some previous podcasts from our buddy on the DMV Dime. And you mentioned kind of how you kind of got started in being interested in the game first off. So kind of tell that story.
Yeah. I mean, my New York City roots are real deep. Of course, I have a ton of love for the DMV area, and everyone here has been so good to me, and I can't thank them enough. I've adopted DMV culture. I got a pair of New Balances. Like I'm on that wave, but my New York City roots are still deep, and that's what got me into the game of basketball. Honestly, I mentioned on Adam's pod, shout out to him. He had me on earlier in last summer. I just mentioned my mom, my dad taking me, like when I was in my stroller, I couldn't even walk, taking me to the park. I would just sit there and watch the older kids play pickup at the park and just wishing I could be one of them one day. And that's kind of where my love started for the game. Just being around the city, being around that basketball culture, and just getting a little bit of everything, whether it's the shoes, like the New York City style of play, the parks. I mean, that's kind of what I love about New York City compared to where I live out in the suburbs of Maryland. I mean, in New York City, there's a park on every block and there's a game on every block, and you can kind of get that hard-nosed, tough New York City pickup vibe everywhere, wherever you are in the city, whether it's Upper East Side, Lower East Side, Harlem, wherever, it's still kind of got that same feel to it. And that's where I picked up my love for the game of basketball, and kind of haven't looked back ever since.
Did you ever go to Rucker Park or anything like that, like the legendary court in New York City?
Yeah. So, I mean, I moved out of the city when I was about 6. Yeah, 6. So back then, my parents, I didn't have enough of a voice in the family to say, yo, let's go out to Rucker Park. And they wouldn't really listen to me like that. So I never made it out to Rucker, and then my trips to the city haven't been as basketball based as I would have liked. Like I want to go back to Geico when they have it at Christ the King. Sadly, they took that away from us. It used to be at Prep, but so I want to go back to it's at Christ the King. I want to eventually make it out to like the Slam Classic, go out to like Dykeman, go out to a summer pickup game at Dykeman. But I mean, this, I kind of go away for the summer. I go to summer camp up in Pennsylvania, which kind of sucks as I got older. I couldn't be around the Capital Hoops Summer League. I couldn't be around NBA Summer League. I never made it to Peach Jam. So there's a lot of stuff on my summer bucket list, and a lot of that includes events in New York City. So hopefully I'm able to make it out there soon.
We should do that next summer. We should definitely make it up for
I'm there.
So you've covered the McDonald's game for a few years. I think that's the first kind of big event that you covered. Talk about your favorite moment from that.
Favorite moment. My favorite moment, I'd probably have to say the first time I was covering it in 8th grade. I'll give you 2 stories. So the first story I have is like, when you're there, it's basically like the way they do it is they have it's like a media hallway, and the big players will kind of like stake out their spot. So then all like the big outlets will go to them. And obviously like the guys like Evan Daniels, and all those types of guys, like they get preferential treatment from not only McDonald's people and the players because they know them, and rightfully so. They're the king of their jobs. So I'm just a 14-year-old kid with no platform. No one even knows who I am. Like I think I tried to get like my best fit off to try to like impress some players. But so basically I'm like sitting there starstruck, like in my literally like my shoes aren't concrete. I think that's the exact line I used in my college essay. And basically Zach Collins is just sitting there at a table by himself. I think he was like in the 40s in the consensus recruiting rankings. He's committed to Gonzaga. Like, no, he wasn't really like the top guy on anyone's list. So I'm like, all right, I'll go give this kid a shot. Like, what else am I doing? I guess with the help of my mom, maybe she'll come out and tell you some stories later on that she maybe even physically had to like push me towards Zach Collins. So I said what up to him, got my interview in, and he followed me on Twitter, and then he still follows me to this day and ended up being a top 10 pick in the draft. So that was pretty cool that he even gave me the light of day and showed some love back to me when I tweeted about him. And that was really, really cool. And then the second story I'll give, once I kind of got my feet under me later in that day, I interviewed – well, actually, I didn't get to interview Terence Ferguson during media day, and I really wanted to. So after the game, I tried to get him, like, when they're going on the bus, and I got it, and he stopped for me, and I got in like a quick minute and a half interview. And I have so much love for T Ferg. Like, he gave me one of the best interviews I have to this day, just full of personality. We talked about like his dance moves, just like all stuff that he kind of wanted talking about. There's a million pictures of us laughing. I think one of them is still on my Instagram to this day. So I have a ton of love for Terence Ferguson and Zach Collins for sure.
Cool. Kind of leading into that, I mean, that was leading into this question rather. Who's been the best interview? It doesn't have to be a McDonald's game. Who's been the best interview you've ever had?
I would say I think De'Aaron Fox is definitely up there. I talked to him when he was a McDonald's All-American, and he was just like a great mix. Like, you could tell like his cerebral court play translated off the court. And we talked about like being a real point guard, like the extension of Coach Cal. And he just has that great big smile. And then like he went up to – I was at Jordan Brand a couple weeks later, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and it was De'Aaron. And I was like, wow, that's crazy that he like even remembers who I am and like went out of his way to like even say what up to me. So De'Aaron too, like just – he was so good to me, and just like that, he just has such a like charismatic personality that translates to the NBA, I think. And then another one I'll give you is Darius Garland for sure. I think DG is a ton of fun. Again, has that big smile. Like he had a little bit of like nervous, like antsy energy because he's just like he's always on. Like DG is always on. That's what I'll say. Everyone loves hanging around him. All the players kind of gravitate towards him. And like when we were doing the draft stuff, like I took that into my evaluation of him for sure. Just like, obviously, if you're not too plugged in, you don't want to like infer too much on personality wise, but when you see it firsthand and you just see everyone gravitate towards him and everyone wants to be around him, everyone wants to play with him, like that's a special trait that you can't really be taught. So I would say Darius Garland and De'Aaron Fox are up there for sure.
Cool. How are you able to balance hoops coverage and schoolwork?
Wait, repeat that again?
How are you able to balance basketball coverage and schoolwork?
I mean, I'm not sure. I'd want you to ask my parents about that, but they'll probably give you a good answer. It was tough. It was definitely tough. I mean, especially playing basketball too, in the heart of the season, like we're talking like January, February. I mean, I'll come home from practice at like 6:30. I'll have schoolwork, and then there's basketball, there's conference play, there's NBA. I mean, the tough thing about the best and the worst thing about basketball is it's on every single night during the season. So there's always a game to watch. There's always someone to watch. There's always a prospect to watch. There's always a team to watch. And I would say that's the biggest double-edged sword for me, someone who loves basketball and loves covering it, but then also who's still a student and has to study and has to get good grades. I would say this year was a lot easier. School was a little bit less stressful. I was already into college. I got into college early, so I was thankful about that. And then right after I heard from schools, I was able to like tone it down in school a little bit. Obviously, still maintaining a good GPA and all that good stuff, but definitely less stressful and was able to focus on hoops a little bit more. But yeah, for the last year and my sophomore year, it's definitely a really tough balance.
So it gets a lot easier in college because you get to choose your schedule.
Yeah,
and it's also a 3 to 4 hour window instead of 7 to 8 hour window like high school.
Yeah.
Talk about your favorite memory as a basketball player. Really hope you have one like the one that guarded Zion.
So I'll give you two stories right here.
Okay.
So first, let me think about this. All right. So first of all, I'll give the first story. And when I was playing AAU, this was probably like the peak of my basketball career, honestly, like playing wise. So I was playing AAU in 8th grade, and on my team, I ran with Havoc City, and on my team we had Dominguez Stevens, Seton Hall commit, Marcus Dockery, Maryland commit, Darius Miles, Alabama commit, Jamal Banks, Wake Forest commit for football. Sometimes we called him Big Baby. Aaron Parks ran with us, but then he eventually chose football. He's Oklahoma for football. So we just had, Noah Charles, like he just committed D2. Like we were loaded. Obviously, I was like the 9th man, the 8th man, whatever. Played my role, came on the court, shot some threes and played some tough point of attack defense. That was kind of my thing, and I liked it. I mean, I was cool with all the kids. The parents were awesome, and that was a great experience. So we went up to hoop group and we played New Jersey players. And this is kind of when like it's like b-ball spotlight is a thing, but you don't really know everyone unless they're like cream of the crop. So we get out there and we play this like short little point guard. He's got on some peach jam shoes. And I know what they are. So I'm like, okay, this kid knows someone. First play of the game, one of the teammates shoots like a regular three from the left wing. And this short, like he is literally 6'1", scrawny at the time, same build he is right now, honestly. And he comes down from the right wing, off one leg, two-hand putback dunk in 8th grade. And the kid was Noah Farrakhan. So we played Farrakhan before he kind of blew up and got all the hype. Obviously, he kind of plateaued a little bit and some ulterior motives and ulterior interests, but we won't talk about that. But when we were in 8th grade, Noah Farrakhan was a killer, and I kind of got to see that before anyone else was. And he killed us that game. And then the second one I'll give you, this is a real funny story. This is my real go-to basketball story. So as I told you, I go to camp in the summer, and it's pretty cool. Like for me, it's pretty cool because I get a break from like all the high level DMV competition. I just get to go ball out against a bunch of Jewish kids at summer camp. So we have this big tournament. There's this camp called Tyler Hill, which is like our main rival. Like we know all the kids. I know all the kids through like Instagram and all that. I mean, everyone just knows each other. So we go out there and it's their tournament. So their entire camp is watching. So they probably think about like 600, 700 kids watching, and we have no fans because you're not allowed to bring any fans. So it's literally 700 people against one. And the game is tied. My boy takes this game-winning three. It goes short. I crash the boards for offensive rebound. It gets batted out to me, and I kind of just like chuck up something, like whatever. They block it, 100% ball. Like literally, when I tell you 100% ball, 100% ball. Anyone could hear it. Their ref calls a foul. So then time has expired. I go to the line down 3, and all I have to do is make one free throw, like literally one free throw. But imagine their whole camp is screaming. That's 700 people is screaming. So I get up there. I'm like literally scared out of my mind. I take a couple of deep breaths, like calm myself down a little bit. Get up there. First one, and first one looks dead. It looks good, dead straight, and just a little bit long. And I'm like, damn, really? Like I thought that was it. I thought I could just end it right there. So I get up. My second one, miss it to the left. And when when you miss left to right, you know it immediately on a free throw. So I knew it was good. I knew it. And then I was like, all right, you got one last chance. Like, get your shit together. You need to make this one. So I'm like self-talk. I'm going through all my, just like calm myself down, taking deep breaths, going through my routine. And so I get the ball, and like technically the crowd isn't allowed to cheer against you. And so I hear the ref blow the whistle for me to like pass him the ball back to him. It's for him to like quiet the crowd down, pass back to me. But I'm like, fuck it. I already have the ball. Sorry for my curse. Am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Let's watch that.
All right, my bad. So yeah. I'm like, whatever. I have the ball. I have the ball in my hands, and I'm like, all right, I may as well shoot it. So I go shoot it just like as a practice, and it goes in and out. And I'm like, oh my God, you have to be kidding me. So now the camp thinks they won, but the ref's like, nah. He gets one more because that one didn't count. So then he gives the ball back to me. Somehow I calm myself down. I knock down the fourth one, quote unquote fourth one, and we beat our biggest rival. So yeah, that's my go-to story.
Practice free throw in the middle of the game-winning free throw attempts?
Yeah, basically. So they gave me a little practice run. Till this day, I don't really know how the ref thought that was okay and how he was going to live that down with 700 people on the sideline rooting against me. But listen, I guess I shot my shot on the practice one, and he let me get a real one. I don't know. I guess.
Were you related to the ref? Like, man.
No, I was not related to the ref. I was not cool. I was not cool with a bunch of the refs down there because I didn't really think they knew what they were talking about. Yeah, so a lot of the refs in summer camp didn't really like me that much because I maybe let them hear it a little bit too much. That got better that got better as I got older, but it definitely was not super cool. He definitely wasn't doing me a favor. I can tell you that.
Hey man, gotta take it how you get it. So my next question is what sets DMV basketball apart from the rest of the country? Like what makes this area and the players that come from it unique?
So this is a great time for this question because I was actually talking about this with someone last night, and we were kind of talking about how like a lot of the top players in other areas like not have beef, but they're always trying to go at each other and like their rise to make sure that their rise is someone else's demise. And I genuinely believe that the DMV is not like that. Like, obviously we've had Quinn Cooks live and we have players defending their reps and like saying, oh, you can't, that's food. You don't want this. Like, I do this, like whatever. Obviously they're going to do that. But I think when push comes to shove, and if we're talking like at everyone's heart of hearts, like every top player, and not even the top player, like every player in the DMV has a really good amount of respect for their, like, let's say opponent. Like, even if a DeMatha player is playing against a Paul VI player, they might know each other from AAU, or they might know each other from the city, or they might know each other from this. Like, everyone kind of knows each other in a certain way, and everyone stays in the area. Like, other than maybe Oak Hill here and there, you don't see a lot of guys leaving the area to go play prep school like you do in New York City and all that. So everyone kind of knows each other, and everyone's been competing against each other from 8U to the varsity level. And I just think that creates bonds that aren't broken. And I think that's what really, really sets the DMV culture apart from everywhere else.
Yeah, I had Marcellus from Legit Stats on, and we were talking about that same thing. And what I mentioned was unique, and from what I've seen is, like you were talking about, if a DeMatha player and a St. John's player are on the same AAU team, or even if they're on a different AAU team, so say the DeMatha dude is playing for Takeover, and it's a Team Durant parent. If the DeMatha dude goes off, I mean, they're quote tweeting it and be like, my guy, or like put on for the area, stuff like that.
Yep.
And I mean, like the support, even if they come from a different school or a different AAU team, when they get up to Team USA, all that stuff. So I just think that that's really unique, and that's really cool. And I mean, like they said, it's just in the water. I mean, it starts at a young age here. I mean, I'm from upstate New York, and a lot of kids being trained by trainers. You just, your dad or an uncle or a coach, until you get to the level like 12, 13. So
yeah,
I just think that that's unique. Can you talk real quick about commitment culture? I know a lot of old really hate, seeing, tweets about, I mean, now it's getting to the point where people are announcing, that they're going to a high school.
Yeah.
I've seen edits, a couple of days before an 8th grader makes a decision where they're, announcement coming in 3 days. And that I'm not as on board with, but I mean, if you're excited, you're excited. And I think it's, something that can be really important to your development, depending, choosing where you go to high school. So talk about that. Give me your opinion on that.
All right. So first of all, I mean, I saw someone tweet about, like, had someone sent out a tweet and was like, oh, now we're committing to AAU teams now. And I personally, I didn't see that on the timeline, but it's probably good that I didn't, because that would kind of drive me off the wall. Honestly, I think that's a little overboard, but I think I do have a little bit of a unique perspective, because as I mentioned, like when I was in 8th grade playing with all those kids, obviously I was set in stone that I was going to my public school and I was going to play JV my freshman year, and I was going to become a program player and work my way up. And that was kind of like, I knew that. And I've known that my entire life. But for these, like for the premier to I don't even need to say premier, but like the good to great players in this area, 8th grade is a really stressful year for them. I mean, it would be like a 12 p.m. game at Laurel Community Center, and we'd have 7 coaches there watching our players. And I'm like, damn, that's crazy. Like, this is just a regular like AAU game against some team we had never played before. And these kids have like the pressure of showing out for these coaches that they're trying to impress. And look, I think maybe committing to a college, yeah, that's a little – I mean, committing to a high school, yeah, maybe that's a little much. But I do want to give the players a little bit of leeway, because it is a huge decision. I think it's a really, really stressful year for them. And it's a big decision. Like you said, where you go to high school can be a huge make or break in your developmental curve. And that's a big, big thing. So while I don't want to encourage it and say, oh, my God, you got to tweet it out, you got to make sure everyone knows, because a lot of these kids sadly end up even transferring after 1 or 2 years. And that's a whole different story, but we won't talk about that for now.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Oh, we will talk about that later. And so I just think, look, it does present a ton. It's just another byproduct of the world we live in right now, where everything has to go on social media and everything is done for clicks and likes and retweets and comments and tags. And I don't want to sound like the old head, but that's a real issue in basketball culture. And I think the more naive you are to that, the longer it's going to take to minimize the problem. But in terms of kids in this area picking their high school, I think it is a very big decision. And I think kids do have a lot to be proud of when it comes to that.
Absolutely. How did you switch from high school coverage to draft coverage?
So the draft is kind of always something that I've been fascinated in. Like, since I was a young kid, I always loved the draft. But kind of when I really made the transition, cover it like as Jake in the Paint covering that, was when I just sounded really egotistical referring to myself in third person, but whatever. We're going to keep going with it.
Big time. All right.
So basically, I would always watch the circuit. Like, I grew up loving the circuit. When I was in 8th grade, I drove up to Hampton to cover the circuit for my blog. And so I was literally just watching the circuit. Like, I was watching AAU to watch AAU for no other reason. And I'm tweeting about some dudes in the YBL, and then I see other people tweeting about these guys, but like through the lens of the draft that's 3 years later. And I'm like, hold up, there's people like this that exist, like that I can interact with. So I kind of really I just like dove headfirst into that world. And I just found out that the draft is kind of the thing that, like, it's tailor-made for me because it gives me an excuse to watch every single level of basketball. Like, I need to watch the NBA because I need to stay in tune with today's game and what archetypes matter, what roles matter, what players are more valuable than others, what makes a winning team, what are the role players on a winning team, all sorts of team building, psychological stuff. And then on top of that, I need to watch college because I need to get my evaluations right, and I need to know who's good at what, who's not good at what translates, what doesn't. And then I also need to watch high school because high school is when you see the kids earliest. You see them in their most fluid and freedom role. Like, I don't like watching the quality of high school basketball, but if we're talking about NBA draft prospects, I think it's really interesting watching them at the high school level because a lot of them, their coaches will just say, hey, roll the ball out. Let's play. Let's see what you can do. And you kind of see them in their most like freedom state of mind. We're talking about like LaMelo Ball is a prime example of that. But it doesn't, I mean, a notable one is RJ Hampton. Like, watching RJ Hampton's high school tape compared to his NBL tape, it's mind blowing. Like, we'll see him pull out these nasty dribble combos that you might not know if he had in his bag in the NBL because he's kind of pigeonholed into some role, which is good for the NBA projection because he's most like a role player. But then you also need to balance the high school sample and say, hey, maybe he can extrapolate and do this, this, and this. So I think the draft is really fascinating because I like to call it the most important real life betting game. Like, it's really a betting game. You're betting on what translates and what doesn't and who's good at what. And does that matter for your team? Like, at the end of the day, these players are mostly all good at basketball or else they wouldn't get drafted. But there's just such a small margin for error in who translates where and who develops in what situation and what ultimately translates to winning a championship, because that's every organization's ultimate goal. So I know I kind of just rambled a lot there, but that's kind of the basis of it. It's just kind of hits every single level that I love, and it allows you to explore basketball in a deeper thinking mindset.
And draft Twitter is such an interesting section of NBA Twitter.
Yeah.
It's very opinionated for sure. So I'm going to ask you one more question before we bring in Papa Rosen for some spice.
All right, I'm going to tell him, can you get Dad? All right. I'm going to text him. All right, you could, yeah, keep going. Can you just get him, please?
So my next question is, you know, you have enough connections and you know enough guys and enough coaches, enough AU guys, where if you wanted to, you could be the first to tweet out a lot of stuff about the DMV scene, but you don't. You know, Mark Stern is kind of the same way. You know, you're not announcing offers. You're not announcing, you know, this kid is transferring from school A to school B. And, you know, is that more of a reflection of not really liking the transfer kind of culture that's in place, or is that a conscious decision?
Yeah, I mean, that's 1,000% a conscious decision. The only time I'll really tweet out an offer is, let's say a coach hits me up directly and they want to get their player some pub. The coaches do a lot for me in this area in terms of granting me access. A lot of them have given me incredible interviews for my podcast. So if they want me to in turn use my platform to give their players some pub, 100% I'll do them that favor and tweet them out, because I mean, that's factual. You just want to have more people tweeting out that X player got X offer. But in terms of when I hear rumors of someone transferring or someone committing to a school, I mean, that's 100% a conscious decision to keep that to myself and either text someone like you on the side, like, yo, you hear about this, so I can talk about it, obviously, because when you hear news, you want to talk about it, but not to tweet that out. And I have a great story about that. So when I was in 8th grade, I basically didn't have a platform at all. And Marquise Bolden, who was McDonald's All-American at the time, I believe he played for USA Hoop Summit, whatever. One of my family friends was in the airport with him, and he ran into Marquise Bolden, not knowing who he was at all. But he's a 7-footer wearing Team USA gear. He doesn't exactly blend in with everyone else. And so my family friend, who's a basketball junkie, went up to him. He started talking to him, and he said, "Oh, where do you go to school?" And he was saying, "Oh, Texas, like DeSoto, Texas, whatever." And he's like, oh, where are you going to school next year? And at the time, he was uncommitted. But he literally slipped up to I kid you not, he slipped up to my family friend in the airport and said, oh, I'm going to Duke. And then was like, wait, never mind. Duke, like, don't tell anyone that I'm uncommitted. Like, forget I just said that. And so, look, he could have said that to random Joe Schmo on the street and it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But my family friend called me up and he said, yo, I got this huge news break. You got to tweet it out. Rumor Marquise Bolden going to Duke. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. Like, that's his decision. He's waited his entire life for his decision. You only get to break it once. And I'm not going to try to benefit off myself and make a big platform by ruining his decision. And I think you kind of see that a lot nowadays. Like, I love the dudes who do crystal ball. It makes my life a lot easier that I don't have to like predict and track down every source on where a kid's going. But like, I don't know, if I was a kid, like, I'd much rather be Zion Williamson and shock the world and go against my every single crystal ball pencil than like minutes before I'm about to announce my biggest decision that everyone from 24/7 is tweeting, he's going here, he's going here, he's going here. So again, like, I think there's credence to it. And I think there's definitely some people whose role is to break news and be ahead of the game. And I get that. But personally, that's just never been my route.
Don't ruin that commitment that commitment video. All right, we got your dad there?
Yeah, my dad's here. I'm gonna put him on real quick so he can hear you. Here, Dad, I think you should. What? Yeah.
Boss, how are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on? How are you?
Just living the dream. So, first off, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan because my dad gave me no choice and made me be a Buffalo Bills fan.
Wide right, baby.
I feel. I mean, I'm not mad, but the same thing is definitely true. I feel like for your son in the Knicks, which I feel like you have an apology. So,
it's awful.
Did he get it from you?
He got that from me. He's got every loser team in the book except the Giants from me. It's a long list.
I'm on board with the Giants as a Bills fan. They beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl. So
Twice.
I got one question for you.
Okay.
What, your son, I mean, he's never going to admit this, but, he's a respected basketball head, not just in the area, but nationally with the draft. What's the worst take he's ever had?
Ooh.
I love – this is my favorite question I've ever – wow, this is awesome. Great question.
Your worst take?
I mean, it could be about an old player that he doesn't think is good because he didn't see him, or maybe he really thought a prospect was going to be good and wasn't.
I can tell you the worst takes he has had generally do revolve around his bracket for the NCAA tournament. If you want the honest opinion, because, I mean, this kid's been blown up on Thursday more times than you can ever imagine. And the amount of people that tweeted him, emailed him, help me with your bracket. What do you think about this guy? What about this team? How far are they going to go? And he comes in, chest out, shoulders high, head high. I know my stuff. And boom, absolutely by 3:30 on Thursday, he's done.
What's the team that he's believed in?
All right, can I defend myself?
Yep.
All right, so I'm taking the mic back from now. So, all right, first of all, let's just preface this with the fact that last year, and if Coach Jones, if you're listening to this, I'm still waiting on my prize. I won the DeMatha bracket league, and there must have been like 150 entrants in there. I had UVA. I had Texas Tech in the Final Four. Like, I think I deserve my flowers for that. So I won the entire thing. I came in first, but to my dad's credit, I was freaking out on Thursday because I was probably like 50% on first round games, and I was completely freaking out and not doing well at all. And the problem is when I have when you have a platform and you like, I just like feel for some reason this kind of like pressure to do well in March Madness. It's like pretty weird, but everyone's texting me, oh my God, you're supposed to know your stuff. You're supposed to know your stuff. What do you do? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Oh my God, you're so bad. You're supposed to be good at this. What are you doing? And I just get like a million of those texts over and over again. Like, I'll give you a prime example last year. So for doing the draft, like I watched a good amount of John Morant, and I just thought that Murray State team was horrible. Like, I thought they were so bad. They had one other dude, I'm blanking on his name, but other than Ja and this his one companion, they were literally so bad. And I thought Marquette was pretty good. Like, they had the Hauser brothers, they had Marcus Howard, and I was like, oh my God, like everyone's just gonna ride Ja and say Murray State. And so I went against the grain. And I was like, all right, Marquette's gonna handle them pretty easily. And Marquette got blown out by 30. Like, it was disgusting. And so then everyone's texting me, you got to get hip to Ja. You got to get hip to Ja. And I'm like, dude, I've been watching Ja since November. Like, you found out about him on Selection Sunday, but now I look like the dumb one because I picked against him, and then they murdered him by 30. But one team I always trusted, and they failed me every single year, is Arizona. The Arizona Wildcats. You know that. Yeah, I'm sure that would have been your answer. The Arizona Wildcats, my last straw with them was the Alonzo Trier, DeAndre Ayton year. I think I had them going to the Final Four, and they got blown out by Buffalo in the first round. So, yeah.
Michigan State, if I pick them in the Final Four, they're out in the first round. And then if I pick them out in the first round, they go all the way to the Final Four. They ruin my bracket every year. The most frustrating thing about the bracket stuff is you can spend all the time doing the research. You can ask other people. You can watch games.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
And then you fill out a bracket, and your sister, who hasn't watched the game all year, will fill out one, and it'll somehow beat you.
Yep.
And there's nothing more maddening than
Definitely guilty about that in this house.
Yeah, I was gonna say with 2013, my sister was like she was one game away from winning my dad's like entire New York pool. Like she would have won like a few $1,000s if Michigan had won that national championship. So I definitely got that one.
And she was 8.
Yeah, she was 8. Yeah,
Really?
she was 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was 8.
Wow, good stuff. All right, you got that call a good way too, boss?
Yep. Thanks,
All right.
man. I appreciate it.
All right,
Very
Mom, you're up. This the real goat right here.
Oh boy. Oh boy. You got the whole squad. How's it going?
Hold on.
You got the headphones on, yeah. How's it going, Mrs. Rosen?
Oh, call me Janine. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
So
good.
I got 2 questions. My first one is kind of talk about, Jake in the podcast with Adam Ayalu, the DMV Dime. He was talking about you literally like pushing him through a throng of reporters. Can you talk about how you kind of gave him the push to do that? And I'm guessing probably encouraged him, with writing and all that stuff when he was upset about having more followers then than I have now.
First of all, I love your shirt. That is awesome.
Yeah,
Number
that
one,
too.
love it. I have to say, the McDonald's All-American game experience from when Jake went in 8th grade versus when Jake went last year, and unfortunately he couldn't go this year, was really different. Last year, I kind of was sitting around the whole time thinking, what am I even doing here? Like, I'm just a chaperone, and was doing work conference calls on the side because he did not need me. When we started in 8th grade, that was a whole different story. And I'm glad now he can look back and say that he was appreciative for the fact that, we had a few disagreements. Look, he was trying to get his sea legs. I'm in communications. This is what I do. I've been in the room during press conferences. I know you need to be aggressive. I know you need to get in there, have your niche. So I just was always trying to encourage him and show him that people were willing to talk to him because he was a kid, which was unique to the aggressive Chicago media of the McDonald's All-American game when we were there. So I would just always be pushing him to go and talk and introduce himself and have a question ready. And in typical Jake fashion, if he didn't do extensive research on the player and have at least 10 questions for the person, he was uncomfortable going up to them. And he and I always laugh, but to this day, I tease him about the fact that he did not interview Malik Monk, because when Malik was standing there, I said, just go talk to him. And he flipped through his notebook and he said, oh, I didn't do enough research on him and I don't have any questions for him and I can't go ask him. So we laugh about that now because obviously, there's a million things they could have discussed. But at that point, if he didn't have thorough research, he was not comfortable. So we always have the Malik Monk reference to go back to.
Yeah.
A lot of progress for sure.
A lot of progress.
What is my last question is, what was the point where you knew that he was serious about this and that he was good enough at it where this could potentially be something that he does for the rest of his life?
Well, first of all, that's very kind of you to give him such wonderful accolades from someone that I know he respects as equally. So that's very sweet. Jake has always had an insane passion for basketball. He it's all he ever thinks about, talks about, watches, plays, does. It consumes his being. And so he came to us in 8th grade and said, I have all this stuff floating around in my head all the time, and I need a platform to share it. And so we said, okay, start a blog, start writing. And never could any of us have imagined that it would be at a point where he'd be on a podcast with you wearing a Jake in the Paint t-shirt. I think that's quite a symbol of how it's come so far. And I think that really there have been a few milestones along the way. I know Jake shared the Marquise Bolden story with you earlier. And I think that was an example for me where I saw that he has tremendous integrity. And I think that that's really critical when you do things like this, because you are dealing with other people's story and you have to be very sensitive to right and wrong information and timing. And so when I saw that example of integrity, I thought to myself, okay, that's a good foundation. Then fast forward, I think when I heard him call his first WCAC basketball game on Monumental Sports Network, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I went to college and I was a broadcast journalism major, and I'm not sure we sounded like that on the microphone. And I was blown away just by his innate skill to share insight, to make it relevant for listeners, to use his vast knowledge and break it down for people who weren't as intimately aware of the players that he was. And those are all skills that as a journalist, I know are so important for success. So I think I knew he was capable well before he knew he was capable. And then I think we always joke that, I'm not sure who it was, but someone tweeted out once when he was in the gym, the game is lit.
Oh, that was Mark. Yeah.
Oh, it was Mark.
That
Okay.
was Mark. Yeah,
He said, the game is lit when at Jake in the Paint is in the house, and took a picture of Jake. And we always laugh because that was never what this intended to be. But yet, on the other hand, he's always been so passionate about basketball, and to have the elite caliber of high school basketball that we have in our backyard, and for him to have the opportunity to have relationships with those coaches, those players, people like yourself and Mark have been tremendous for him. And, I know Mike Jones sent him a text recently that said, we'll always claim you as our own in the DMV. And that, I think, to me is when I was really blown away by what he's created. That was a moment where I took pause.
Absolutely. He probably had 18 pages of notes on that WCAC game too. He probably knew what the coach had for breakfast.
Yeah, for sure.
Something like that.
For
Awesome.
sure.
Well, you raised a great kid for sure. That's
you.
all I got for you. I'm gonna hit him with some draft questions.
Okay, sounds good. Have fun talking
have
draft.
Thank you, Mom.
Bye.
Awesome stuff. So my first note that's going to trigger you is that NBA Draft Net, the composite draft, has Kira Lewis going 60th overall.
Yeah, I mean, listen, once you started off with NBA Draft Net, I dropped every sensitive bone in my body once you said NBA Draft Net, because if I actually allowed myself to get triggered by NBA Draft Net, I couldn't function as a regular human being every day, just based on the stuff that they put out. I think I don't know about their composite rankings. I don't look at their stuff often, but I do know someone sent me, because I'm lower on Daniel Oturu. And so someone sent me something that NBA Draft Net has him at 7. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, no, seriously, go check the link. And so I checked the link, and sure enough, Oturu is going 7th overall to the Hornets in one of their mocks. So, I mean, listen.
We had Stewart and Carey top 20 too.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't shock me, honestly.
Precious was top 20 as well.
Yeah, look, that doesn't shock me, and those are probably 3 or maybe 4 if we're including Oturu of the biggest mainstream players that I'd maybe disagree with. But in terms of Kira, if you want me to defend Kira, I will. You want me to go defend Kira?
Let's stick to 30 seconds on Kira because I know
Okay, 30 seconds on Kira. All right, I'll give you my elevator pitch. So the elevator pitch is that he seriously is one of the fastest dudes I've ever seen with the basketball. Like, he literally glides, and there's times in transition where he just has an extra step of acceleration that I haven't really seen very often from anyone. Like, it looks like he's going at full speed, and then there's just a split second, like you can see it in his head where he's like, all right, I'm turning on the jets, and like he just snaps into that extra gear, and he'll get either all the way to the right basket or create for someone. Now, the biggest problem with Kira is his finishing at the rim. He has a tendency to take off a little bit too far from the rim and doesn't have great vertical pop, like not a ton of dunks. So he kind of gets his shots blocked at the rim a lot and kind of isn't as good as I would like there. But he's a really good shooter off the catch, which I like because he can play on and off the ball. He's got great speed, a great first step in the half court. Like, that speed translates to the half court as well. Really impressive lab drill passer with both hands. Like, if you watch him, he'll nail down some skip passes with either hand, left or right off the dribble. And then in the games I've watched recently, I'm really impressed with his in-between game. Like, he flashed a little pull-up, he flashed a floater. And the big swing skill for him, I think, is on top of the finishing, of course, is that pull-up jumper. Because if you have to respect his pull-up jumper with his first step, like, it's just going to be a nightmare.
What's he like defensively?
Defensively, I like him. I like him more than most. I think he has his lapses for sure, like everyone does, but he's really quick, and I think he's pretty good anticipatory in passing lanes. Like, he'll get his hands in there. He's super quick. I had one clip where he jumps the passing lane and then lays it in, gets back on defense and picks someone's pocket. Like, obviously he's not the on-ball pest who's going to pick your pocket every once in a while, but just having those flash clips happen at all is really impressive. And I trust him on that end more than others do. He's not I'm not going to pencil him in as a plus defender, but I think he's more than tenable at either guard spot on that end with certainly has room to grow.
So I have four guys I just want you to give me quick thoughts on, because these are my guys. These are the guys that I really like. First one we don't really need to talk about because he's getting a lot of love now, is Onyeka Okongwu.
Yeah.
That's his name, right? But I just love, I think I saw you tweeted the way he moves. He's able to move laterally. He just he's not just a freak athlete. He's also like a really smooth athlete.
Yep.
And I just think that his upside is crazy. I like my three others are Mason Jones, who I've been watching a bit more of recently, Jameis Ramsey, who I'm the most bullish on, and Leandro Bolmaro.
I like these.
I think Mason is I just think he's such a good scorer. And, you can't ignore the fact that he led the entire SEC in scoring. I feel like that's been, glossed over a lot. And I've seen him, late second round, a lot of mocks. I just like him. None of these guys I think are really going to be superstars. Okongwu's, I feel like the closest to that. I just really think that they're not going to be as good as Pascal Siakam, but I see that they're going to go late like he did, and people are really going to regret it. I'm really bullish on Jameis Ramsey. I feel like the jump shot is something you can teach. That level of athlete, it's just hard to find. I think he's pretty good defensively, and I really like his motor personally.
Mm-hmm. So basically, as everyone will be able to tell by the exercise we're about to do, once you're picking outside the top 15, the guidelines we have, you're not really going to get a superstar. I think the closest one to any of a high usage superstar is Devante Graham, who I'm sure we both have on our team as just someone who can carry a high load and score at not high efficiency, but he's a great pull-up shooter, and your NBA team can be functional, not great, but functional by giving him the ball as a 1 or 2 option. Mainly after that range, you're just getting role players. When we're talking about guys like Mason Jones, Ramsey, and Bolmaro, it's all guys that are in that, I would say, 20 to 35, 40 range. Yeah. Which one do you want to start off with?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. I want to talk real quick to 30 seconds on Deni and Pokusevski. Sell me on them because I'm
all right. So I love Deni. I absolutely love Deni. I thought I loved Deni in the summer. He was incredible playing at the U20 Euros, and then I just rewatched 3 or 4 Israeli league games. I was finally able to find them on YouTube, and now I love Deni even more. Basically, what you're getting with Deni is he's he's a jack of all trades. And I don't mean that in like a jack of all trades, master of none, because I think he's top tier, like top 3 in the class at I think he's probably has the best defensive positioning of anyone in the class. And at his size, in terms of functional passing, I think he's also probably in the top 5 of that. With the defensive positioning, I project him as a 4. He's 6'8", doesn't have a great wingspan, doesn't have a great frame. He's a little bit on the scrawnier side, but I think he does have room to put on weight with about an even wingspan. So right off the bat, we're not talking about great measurables or tools for a secondary rim protector. But like I said, the positioning is just unreal. He's basically flawless. Like, we talk as basketball coaches, we teach, okay, you move on a string with your man. When he moves, you move. And Deni is the epitome of that. Whenever one of his teammates moves, he reacts in the perfect spot. And his verticality on shot contest is absolutely incredible. He doesn't foul. He goes hands up, straight up, doesn't go for the block, and just alters so many shots. And like I said, he's right there and help every single time. So the defensive side is super, super sound. On offense, like I said, he's a great passer in the half court. He's a good cutter, smart cutter, and he has some creation game off the bounce too. Like, if you watch his U20 Euros, I'd recommend that for sure. He played point guard. He was the primary initiator the entire tournament. He was playing up 2 years, and Israel won the whole thing, and he was the MVP. He completely dominated the tournament. The big question mark obviously is the shooting. He's like in the mid 50s as a free throw shooter, but the mechanics are really far from broken. I think it's all mental at that point with him at the free throw line. He shot like in the mid 30s, I believe, from 3 this year. He does have some really bad misses. Like, he had an air ball in the game I watched. He missed short in the game I watched, like really bad short into the left. But basically, I know I'm rambling a little bit longer here, but this is my main point against on Deni. The base of his shot is kind of the main proponent for everything else. When he lands straight up, straight down, like kind of a pogo stick motion, maybe his feet fly out a little bit, but he lands in the same spot that he jumped from. It's basically cash. Like, it's either straight, it goes in, or it's a little bit short or a little bit long. They're all great misses. But when his legs start to flare out and do like a scissor kick or land in front or land in the back, then that's when you get those air balls or those wide right and wide left. So if I'm an NBA team, I'm literally like having to train him, like he's shooting and I'm giving him like a little circle where his feet have to jump from and land from every single time. And I think I'm not really tripping off the free throw percentage. I think he's a real good shooter. Or he can be a really good shooter. And then
Poku. I mean, I think Deni's going to be a role player, and he's going to be, he's definitely going to make it in the league.
Yeah.
Much lower on Poku.
Yeah. So, I mean, with Deni, last thing on Deni, like, I don't think he has star upside, but I think he can be a really good player on a championship team, and that's ultimately what you're looking for. So with Poku, he's a unicorn, like straight up unicorn. I've never really seen anyone like him. He's 7 feet tall, and on the FIBA website, he's listed as a shooting guard, and that's basically all you need to know with Poku. He's 7 feet tall, skinny as a rail, but offensively, he's crazy. I mean, his jump shot mechanics are pretty inconsistent, especially the upper body and the release and the follow-through. Sometimes it'll flare out, sometimes it'll flare up, sometimes it goes to the side. But overall, it's super fluid. Like, he'll come off a movement screen at 7 feet, get his feet set, rise up, great elevation, he'll knock it down. He's a great passer. He'll literally pass live dribble with his right and his left off the dribble for a 7-footer. And defensively, he's just a big-time event creator. Like, he'll be in the passing lanes for steals. He'll come over on the weak side for blocks. He has really quick hips. He can guard on the perimeter. With Poku, he's just like, he moves like no 7-footer I've ever seen before. The problem is that he's really, really, really skinny, and he gets pushed around on the block all the time. Rebounds, he'll get shoved out of the way on both ends of the glass. When he goes to finish in the paint, he'll just get bumped off his spot. Like, it won't be a foul because it's not a foul, but he'll just get bumped off his spot by someone's chest. And his offensive usage, and it's interesting. It's because, are you going to really have a 7-footer just roaming around the 3-point line? Well, if you draft Poku, you kind of have to, because he's a long way from being tenable on the inside on offense. Like, he's never going to post up. But I do think he's a unicorn that you can run pick and pops with. He can run off movement screens. He can curl. He can attack closeouts. He can pass. He's super versatile. I think you definitely need to have like a steady, like, if you're going to play him at the 5, you need to have a bruising 4. If you're going to play him at the 4, you need to have a bruising 5 to kind of offset that muscle difference. But I do think he's worth a shot. I think I'm going to have him in the low 20s, maybe even at 20. He's definitely one of the hardest evals because you don't know what's going to translate, and it kind of all depends on his developmental situation. But he has an incredibly unique base to work with.
My thing with him is just, if it's a big that, is just really tall and he's doing non-big things, he's doing guard movements, I just worry about the injury injury history. And then, I mean, I don't know a ton of guys that are super tall that are able to put on a lot of muscle really easily. And I think in the NBA, if you can't put on that frame, it can be difficult. With guards, I feel like you can do it quicker. At least I'm able to see that, more often maybe than assistant. But what's some quick hitters real quick. What's a prospect that you hit on and one that you completely missed on?
True. I mean, all right. So I haven't really been doing this so seriously for this that long. Last year was probably the first year I've been doing this seriously, but not even to the depth that I was doing it this year. But I've always had my thoughts about the draft. So I'll give you someone that I missed on was Denzel Valentine. I thought obviously I wasn't doing draft work like I am now. I wasn't grinding film. I wasn't projecting, and I wasn't thinking philosophically like I do now, but I just thought Denzel Valentine was a damn good basketball player. And I thought there was just too many ways where he could impact the game. He was too smart. He was too good on both ends. I thought there's no way this guy can't make it in the NBA. He's just too good in college. And I think I would say I significantly whiffed on him. And he kind of, let's just say that wasn't my best evaluation.
It's hard for tweeners if they're not good defensively and if they don't have the body for it. Draymond Green was built like a tank. Going back to high school. So
yeah, I mean, looking back on Denzel, he probably needs to become a primary and have a sick handle or he needed a sick handle because he has no burst for that passing ability and smarts to translate. But now he just can't create any advantages. So yeah, I'll say him.
Who's someone you hit on?
Somebody I hit on, I'll say Brandon Clark. I wasn't as high as some other people on draft Twitter call it, but I think I finished with Clark 8th on my board compared to where he got drafted, which was 22nd or 23rd. With Clark, you just saw he was a freak athlete, and the measurables said one thing, but the film said another. And if we're going between those two things, I'm trusting the film. And he was just so good on film. His verticality is probably the best I've ever seen any prospect. He shoots up off the ground. That's another reason why I'm big on Okongwu. I think both of them, they kind of their short pop time. They'll pop up in an instant. And I think you can't underestimate how much that matters for weak side and primary rim protection purposes. So Brandon Clark, wicked athlete, has crazy touch on floaters, which eventually translated to him shooting catch and shoot threes this year. And basically with Clark, you just saw a crazy work ethic. If you saw him shoot at San Jose State, it was probably the worst basketball shot I've ever seen in my life. I'm not even exaggerating. Look up a clip of it. You can probably find him on Twitter or on YouTube. It is the worst basketball. He basically, now that we're on Zoom, I can kind of reenact it. Basically, he had the ball here. He would kind of shot put it by his all the opposite ear and push it out. And literally maybe two, I can't even remember, maybe two hands, maybe not. But all I remember is the load up was horrible. And he basically revamped that in one redshirt year to a functional shot at Gonzaga.
It was Gonzaga, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, Gonzaga. So then he was at San Jose State, and then he transferred to Gonzaga. Oh, okay. And then during the redshirt year, they completely retooled his jumper. And now he took, again, a big stride and is now catch and shoot threes. So concrete mechanical improvements are something I really value in terms of shooting improvement. And that's something we can talk about with Bolmaro too, because I think he's definitely fits into that category. So with Clark, I think I'm comfortable that I hit on his evaluation and was maybe even too low.
Gonzaga is great with development, which leads into my next question. I got two more after this. So Gonzaga's development is great. Not just them specifically. What's a non-physical trait that you think is a good predictor of success or more integral to development in a prospect?
So non-physical.
Yeah. So work ethic, concentration, focus, love for the game.
I think work ethic is obviously huge. It's tough for someone like me and you to gauge work ethic because we're not on the inside. We don't hear things. We kind of only hear if a prospect is either outlier good or outlier bad in that area. I can't really speak to you, but that's kind of the only news that trickles down to me. So, I mean, that's tough. That's something I don't want to put a ton of stock into because who knows who's telling me what. Is it true? Is it not? Where they get it from? All those kind of things. So something on film that I can confidently say translates to the next level is feel, basketball feel, and just the understanding for the game that translates to the next level. And it's something I really look for in prospects. Are you able to make the right read? Are you able to make the right play? Are you able to make the right rotation? Do you know your role? Are you aware of your role? Are you aware of your strengths and weaknesses? And I don't want to talk about Wiseman because I talk about Wiseman all the time, but that's kind of something Wiseman doesn't, he's on the worst end of the spectrum in all those traits. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know what his role is and all that stuff. So I think feel for the game, which is why I love Deni and Deni's defensive positioning so much, and just the little things that I love to pay attention to, and I think really translates because, like we're saying, it's a league. The NBA is a league full of role players. Unless you're going to hit that star level outcome, you're a role player. And I think feel for the game and ability to make decisions as a role player is super, super critical.
I think I don't really know what the word for it is, but like perseverance. I mean, because you can have a great work ethic, but if you get injured or life someone passes away, girlfriend's pregnant, maybe the team doesn't give you as many minutes as you want. It's got to be that initiative to keep grinding and keep working. I mean, I feel like that's really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Before our exercise, what's the best piece of advice that was given to you, and what advice would you give to someone that you have that's younger than you coming up in the business?
Man, best piece of advice I've gotten. Phew, this is a tough one. Damn. I wish I knew this one before because people have given me a ton of good advice, and now I'm blanking. I'm gonna take. Can I combine these two?
Sure.
Because I've gotten this advice a lot, and I can't remember like who, because it's kind of come from a lot of different people.
Okay.
And this is certainly the advice that I would give to someone. And it's when you're trying to like make it and build a platform for yourself and like make a niche and gain traction, you can't compare yourself to anyone else. It's just you and your journey. Someone else's success is completely independent of your success and your growth. And that's something we can get caught up in a lot in social media, comparing followers to someone else. Oh, did I get as many retweets as them? Did I get as many likes as them? And really, to be frank, like none of it matters. If you're doing, and something I've learned, if you're doing good work, if you're persistent, if you're putting yourself out there, it'll all come your way. And I really believe that. And it's true. Like that has worked for me. I learned that you really can't compare yourself because there's a million factors that go into why someone follows someone on Twitter or someone retweets that tweet. Like it might have nothing to do with the work they tweeted. It might have nothing to do with their evaluation. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is kind of just stay in your lane, work on yourself, focus on yourself. And if you put forth the best version of yourself and the best version of your work, then you just got to be proud with it. And wherever the chips fall, they fall.
One quick one too. Sorry, I just looked down at my notes and saw it. If you have it, what do you think is the next big trend for the game of basketball?
True. Next big. If we're talking NBA level, it's got to be mobile bigs, and maybe I'll put an asterisk to undersized. Less confident on that one, but definitely mobile bigs. The game is more spaced, more threes, more. I mean, it's just defenders, and this is ultimately why I'm so so high on Okongwu and low on Wiseman. It's because one can move and one can't. And in basketball, if you're a big man with how heavy the pick and roll game is today, you have to be able to move. You have the more pick and roll coverages you're able to play, the more versatile your defense is, and usually the better the defense is. Centers, obviously the post up, like I'm not breaking any news to say the post up isn't as valuable as it was 15 years ago, but yeah. I'm saying switchable defenders, and not only switchable, just smart, mobile, big defenders. I think that's the next point in the game. Seth Partnow has talked about, and I love talking about this on every podcast. I go on everyone who talks to me, the heliocentric model of basketball. I don't know if you've read about this, but it's basically like the Eocentric Method is like everything revolves. I think it's around the sun. It's like an astronomical theory, but it's basically that like you have your one player, like your Giannis, your LeBron, your Harden, your Luka, Trae Young even, and you let them rock out and you just surround them with role players who can make catch and shoot threes, attack closeouts, and make decisions. And your whole offense is surrounded around one creator. And I just think that's where the game is going right now. So I would say smart role players who can make decisions, like we talked about with that feel, and centers who can guard in space, because ultimately how all those, like we talked about, heliocentric creators are getting their looks and getting their actions is through the pick and roll with the center. So if your center can't guard in space, you're toast. So I think big men who can guard in space, it would be my answer.
My two is guards that can post and can score from the post. I think we were away from that. And then just bigs that can pass. I mean, I feel like this kind of stuff, I mean, they're just a lot better at it. The previous version was just kind of block shots and rebound. All right, let's get to the last part of this podcast, which I know you're excited for. I'm very happy that you were excited for it too, because that was just a cool idea that I thought of. So taking away the top 15 picks, 3 drafts, put together a 10-team roster. Do you want to go first? Do you want mine?
All right, I'll give my starting lineup first, then you go your starting lineup, then we'll go benches.
I
All
organized
right.
it like that too, so I like.
All right, yeah. So my starting lineup, I have Devante Graham, Dante DiVincenzo, OG Anunoby, Brandon Clark, and John Collins at the 5.
So the only one I didn't have was DiVincenzo, and he was one of my hardest omits. Leaving him out was tough. Leaving Alonzo Trier out was tough.
I didn't think twice about Trier.
I liked Terence Davis, and I left out Matisse Thybulle. So my rotation I would have, so I had to mix defense and offense because some of these guys, it's one or the other with them.
Yep.
So Devante Graham, Josh Hart, Robinson, Collins, and Jared Allen.
So you had Duncan Robinson, I'm assuming, right? Yeah. So my bench, I had Duncan Robinson, Derek White, Terence Davis, DeAnthony Melton, and Mitchell Robinson.
Our second team was pretty different. So
yeah, I assumed the bench would be different.
Yeah. So my second team, finding a creator was kind of rough. I think I texted you that finding the point was real rough. So I had Landry Shamet, Brandon Clark, OG Anunoby, Kuzma, and Mitchell from your beloved Knicks. I mean, I really needed Clark and OG in that lineup to hold it down defensively for Kuzma and Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, Kuz, that's why he didn't even make my team. I'm not putting Kuz out there. No way.
I'm not saying he's not a bad player. I'm not saying he doesn't have upside, but some of the stuff that I saw in the Anthony Davis trade stuff, and they were like, no, we can't include Kuzma. I'm like, for Anthony Davis? I mean, Anthony Davis is a lot better than he will ever be. So let me ask you one last question, just because I got the notification on my phone, and then we'll sign off. So Mac McClung cut his list to Texas Tech, BYU, Auburn, Memphis, USC, Arkansas, and Wake Forest. Do you have any thoughts on maybe what you think his final 3 will be, or what you think?
Listen, go to Texas Tech. If you want to be developed, go to Texas Tech, sit under Chris Beard for a year. You'll learn how to play. Well, unless you're Jameis Ramsey, you'll learn how to play defense, because that's our biggest disagreement. Mac McClung, go to Texas Tech. Chris Beard will teach you how to actually play basketball. Like, the thing with McClung is he's good. Like, I do think he's solid. Like, he can score the ball, but right now he's just a high usage player who doesn't really pass or play defense. Like, he's fun. He's fun. Don't get me wrong. And he has some real talent and obviously some athleticism, but go to Texas Tech. Chris Beard will teach you how to be an actual basketball player. That's my word of advice.
That was my final 3, just looking at it real quick, that I would choose for him is Texas Tech, Auburn, just because of his style of play. You know, him in that Bruce Pearl system with all the threes and fast breaks.
Auburn will be fun too. I love Bruce Pearl.
And my last one would actually be Wake, because of the new coach that they got there.
Yeah.
I think he would know how to utilize him. And I mean, at Wake right now, they've had a lot of guys transfer out. So, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if he wants the keys, I promise you can go rock out at Wake. That's for sure.
This is true. All right, anything you want to put out there, anything you want to plug, any last debate or question you got for me?
I'll say, can we talk Jameis Ramsey before we leave? Sell me on Jameis Ramsey.
I think his athleticism is special. I think I really do think slashers translate to the NBA. If you're able to cut through defenses, I mean, not as much as I haven't seen much of him in the pick and roll. I mean, I got to watch some more film on him, but in the games I saw, like, he was blowing by his guy and finishing at the rim. I mean, I just like it when the player is aggressive offensively and defensively. And I feel like, you know, the best defensive players, they play like they got bees buzzing around in their head, you know. And I just feel like he's a disruptor. I feel like there was something about his measurements that really popped to me. I forget if it was his hands or his wingspan. It was one of the two. But I just think that I feel like his floor is Marcus Smart, and if that's what I'm drafting in whatever range he goes in, he's probably not going to be a top 15. Probably 20. If I'm getting Marcus Smart at that position, I'm happy. Because how many guys do you know in today's league that are willing to do all the dirty work, that are willing to play defense, that are, hyper athletic? I mean, some of the dunks I saw him, like some of the putback dunks, and just attacking the rim. Just with this, I think he's D Wade, but the slashing ability reminds me of D Wade at Marquette, because his D Wade's game at Marquette was much less predicated on his jump shot and much more predicated at just detonating at the rim.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think with that, it just seems like his work ethic and his tenacity. I just feel like his floor is so high, and if I get a player, in the late 20s, I'm on board.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think I see the Smarts. I think Smart would probably be like a higher end outcome for him, just because I see like he's an event creator. Like he'll be in the passing lane, he's disruptive on the ball. But I mean, he's in the games I've saw, like he's pretty bad off the ball. Like he'll get lost once he tags and help getting back to his man. He's kind of lost getting back to his assignment, and just his positioning is kind of off. But in terms of offense, like his shooting form is beautiful. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. It's just straightforward. There's no other way to say it. Like that form is super, super clean. And I buy him as a high level catch and shoot shooter. I do. Like other people are concerned with the free throws. I'm not really concerned about the free throws. Like the dude shot the 3-pointer at a high clip with some pretty high difficulty. Where I'm more skeptical is kind of the shot creation. I think he's a pretty poor decision maker. Like he gets pull-ups blocked a lot. His shot creation isn't his shot selection isn't great. He'll take a lot of contested pull-ups. His handle is really meh. His burst isn't so super great. So with Ramsey, I just think like his shot, like if you're buying Ramsey to me as like a point of attack defender, if you're selling him to me as a point of attack defender who's going to create events on the ball and catch and shoot threes at high level, then I'm comfortable with it. But when I don't know, I'm just more skeptical of like him as like a big time shot creator because of the shot selection and the handle.
I see him like just definitely not his ceiling, but I kind of see a bit of Kelly Oubre in him too. I don't think that you're drafting him to be in your top 5, but I think
right,
your top 7, top 8 type of guy. And I mean, I think the thing that people underrate is there's a lot of players that go to the college level and just kind of in one ear out the other, and you can just tell. But I mean, sometimes just the style of play, the tenacity, the aggression that their coaches kind of wake up in them. What's his name, Donovan Mitchell, that played at Louisville under Pitino. I mean, I feel like you can tell that he went to Louisville and played for Pitino. The way that he plays the game, the way that he's just super confident, super aggressive. So, yeah, that's why I like Ramsey.
Yeah, I get it for sure. All right, that's all.
Sounds like it was a very lukewarm sell, but I'll work on that. We'll talk about it.
I'm sure this won't be the last Ramsey talk we have.
All right, one more thing. Who's an underrated player in the area? We didn't talk much about high school.
Oh, in the area?
Show some love to an underrated guy.
Underrated players in the area. You got to let me think on this one. See, people, so I'm more like, all right, yeah, Eric Reynolds. Eric Reynolds is one of the most underrated players in this area. And I'm very, very confident on that take. I was going to go elsewhere because I feel like he's like too good to be underrated. Like he's already a consensus top 200 guy by 24/7 and all that. But like he still doesn't get enough love. And I'm hurting for everyone that didn't have the circuit this year, but especially him, because I think he would have had a great year in Nike EYBL with TakeOver. Like that dude, he's a great shot creator. He has all the moves in the bag, has had pure touch on his jumper since the first time I saw him in middle school. And just, he's so fluid. And his frame, he's a little skinny right now, but I think once he puts on some weight, he's pretty bursty. And I just love his approach with the game. And I think he's a really, really, really good basketball player that doesn't get the love he deserves.
That backcourt is unbelievable.
Yeah, Bolus was fun this year, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on the pod, and take care, stay safe, and
All right.
keep
Yeah, thank you
draft
so much for having me, and thank you so much for having my parents. That was really, really fun, and I've never
Well,
done that before.
It
So
was
that
a
was
lot
awesome.
of fun. Plug some. I know you got the article coming out soon, so plug
Yeah.
that and give out your Twitter info and all that.
All right, so you can hit me up on Twitter at Jake in the Paint. If I'm really interactive on there, if you hit a question, just at me. I'll respond for sure. I spend way too much time on Twitter, so definitely at me. Don't second guess it. I'm posting an article tomorrow, just talking about some players, and the like thought process behind it is in the movie Draft Day. Sonny Weaver Jr. He tells the scouts in the room. Have you ever seen this movie? You got to see this. You have to have seen this movie. You have to have seen it. So basically, they have the number 1 pick, and there's this guy, Bo Callahan, who's the consensus number 1 recruit. And Sonny, the GM, is like, give me something. And they're like, yeah, he's perfect. We have nothing. And then Sonny goes on this monologue. Well, everyone's got something. They said Elway didn't have touch. He threw too hard. They said Peyton didn't have arm strength. He couldn't throw deep. None of it seemed to matter. So I'm kind of taking those couple quotes as the premises for the article, and I talk about some pretty heavy hitters, and I list there's something, and in the end, does it matter? And when I say doesn't matter, I'm not saying will it prevent them from ever making the NBA or sticking in the NBA. It just doesn't matter, and will it prevent them from reaching a high-end outcome, or are they able to overcome it with their strength? So that's dropping tomorrow. I'm really excited about that. I put in a ton of work on it, and I'm going to go put the finishing touches after we finish this pod. So everyone stay tuned for that, and that'll be on my website, jakeinthepaint.com. So that's really all I have to plug.
Love watching you grow and develop, man.
Thank you.
Word.
It's much
All right,
appreciated. All right. Thank you for having me, and
Nice.
keep
Thank you.
tuning into Hoop Threads.